So it was decided to refurbish the old Sage transmitter. It was there, it was usable. So they got the Air Force personnel in and refurbished it. Then they contracted with the company BJM that I used to work for, and I went out, I started to modify it and, make it.
What is BJM specifically?
It's a military industrial contract that we made radar jamming equipment.
Okay. So what's your background?
I'm essentially an electrical engineer. I have a BS degree, and my specialty was essentially receivers.
Okay.
As you can see, these are all receivers. I'm a fanatic on receivers and radio gear. So I was taken out, and my job was to modify the big old radar transmitter for this special purpose. It started out with what we call the microwave oven experiments, where they just took a human being, stuck him in a building, focused the big antenna on him, pumped out 100 million watts of power, and hooked the people in that radar beam. And they got it to the point where they could actually type in a command to the computer, and the computer would pulse the transmitter, and the person would do it to some extent. Then,
so there were triggering mechanisms in the brain.
Don't know if it's the brain direct or the psyche. See, here we're getting to the question: is your intelligence in the brain, or is it some quantum function that's outside the brain? I personally believe the brain is a computer interface, and that your intelligence is outside the brain. Because there are documentation of a number of people existing without a brain. Or being brain dead.
Now don't laugh so much.
To continue on the Montauk story, they had developed the microwave oven experiment to the point where they got it. They could type in a command, they could get the person to act like a chicken or whatever it is. Of course, Duncan here was one of those research people that they hit with this. Why someone didn't realize that this would burn out the person's brain, I don't know.
Cluck.
And it was finally realized, well, if we turn the antenna around, the non-physical energetic component go through the antenna, and the burning rays would be reflected off into the atmosphere. Of course, they had to route jets away because they shot down a few jets possibly with this thing. You have 100 megawatts of power going out in the air, and the airplane flies too close. It's going to knock out all its avionics equipment. But that was easily to be arranged. In fact, that can be documented today that the old Sage site in the 70s was off limits to airplanes. Especially east of the Sage site.
By Sage site, you're referring to?
The Montauk base.
Okay.
They didn't know where you would run into the UHF beam that would wipe out avionics on the airplane.
Well, the alien beam from the 400 megahertz blast, that's another story.
And
it's also off limits today after 4 o'clock, and there are no aircraft warning lights on the transmitter.
For aircraft?
There are no aircraft warning lights on the transmitter tower, and it's we've been told it's off limits after, I believe, 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Really?
that's when they turn on the existing equipment that they're still using. But
there you go, Vince.
They realized that they had a system which they were able to enter the mind of a human being by typing in computer commands. Now, at the same time, this group had heard of some of the alien interchange, the alien research. They heard that the aliens had a chair deal, that you could sit a human being in and it would read out everything that's in his mind. Mm-hmm. Of course, they were very interested to interface that into the computer. Mm-hmm. You know, hey, we had a computer that could take thoughts and make them real, manifest them. So what they wanted to be able to do was sit Duncan in a chair, have him concentrate on Tom Tulane here. Mm-hmm. Tom Tulane acts like a chicken, and Duncan would visualize, create in his mind a virtual reality where Tom Tulane is acting like a chicken. This would go through the computers, go out the transmitter. It would spread out, would find Tom like a radionics. It would, converge on Tom, mm-hmm. and Tom would be compelled to act like a chicken. Mm-hmm. This is essentially what they did. They made essentially a mind amplifier.
There would be enough horsepower to overtake a person's normal defense system, mm-hmm. and the person would become subjective to the format, the work duty that was presented.
They'd be controlled.
But is it your mind interfacing with my mind?
Yes
Or
or
is
no.
it some collective mind?
It's
And you're-
it would be an artificial presentation of instructions to do work which would integrate with
With
Whether
my
it-
mind, with my normal electrical functions in my brain?
your brain, your auric field, your spirit, soul, and if it's strong enough and if
So it's
there
more
was-
on a level of energy, physical
Yeah.
energy, not
absolutely
It's more
nothing
energetic.
physical.
Yes.
energetic / electromagnetic, which in this reality form are highly structured and based into. Sure.
Interesting.
So you finished, Duncan? To continue.
Yeah.
Yes, he's not finished, completely.
No.
But to continue, they develop a mind amplifier where a person such as Duncan, who's been trained in a virtual reality project, something very similar to the Lawnmower Man movie, would be trained to actually visualize something and create in his mind a full, complete physical reality known as a virtual reality. He would be sat in that chair. The radio equipment, the computer equipment, the transmitter equipment would pick up that virtual reality by a group of coils and different kinds of sensors. Would go to a massive computer bank. The computer would align it, stabilize it, all that good stuff, control it, store it. The computer would then feed it to the actual radar transmitter, which would transmit out electromagnetic equivalent of what we call thought form in the metaphysics field, and transmit this thought form out at lots and lots of CW power. We believe today the CW power output of the Montauk Project was in the order of 100 megawatts or 100 million watts, and the pulse power was up in the terawatts. Terrorize people. But terrorists
But they needed
10
something to
60.
control it as well, so they must have been using a computer system,
Yes,
very advanced.
Very advanced. They use a Cray 1 computer feeding, they use multiple Cray computers for multiple chairs, feeding an IBM 360 or 370, the biggest one IBM had. And then this fed a very specialized radar computer that was built by AIO in Long Island that interfaced to the actual transmitter and controlled the pulse modulation, the frequency hopping of the transmitter. And then went out through all stages, above ground first and underground, back above ground to the big antenna, and transmitted out the big antenna. What they noticed is this thing had enough power they could actually materialize things. Knows if Duncan could form something in his mind, this thing had the power to actually bring it into physical reality and materialize.
Through the system at the end of the process, it
Yeah.
would occur.
It could actually, if he thought of a can of beer, it could create that can of beer and you could drink
Wow.
it. See, he was trained to actually visualize something in its entirety. And what they were experimenting with was precipitating or materializing objects around the base. A favorite was a can of Budweiser beer on the base commander's desk. The base commander liked Bud. So they showed Duncan a picture of the base commander's desk in his office, and he would visualize in his virtual reality a can of Budweiser beer sitting on that desk. Sure enough, it would appear on that desk. And the guy could drink it, it didn't poison him or anything. He said it was very good. It was better than typical Bud was.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, but they noticed a peculiarity here. Something very peculiar was happening. He might concentrate at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The can of beer might appear 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, anywhere in that stretch. It would be out of real time. So it was realized, hey, this thing will bend time. Of course, they got all excited over that. And they sent the whole group of us technical scientific people out to study time. They told us, learn everything you can about time, how to control it, what it is. This was like 1979. By 1981, we had modified the system so we had a working time tunnel, a working time portal. Duncan here, and we think there may have been one other psychic used for the time. Duncan here has multiple time references, and which he can speak on in a bit, because we're almost to the end of the project, where he could actually visualize another time, and you would have a personal connection through these multiple time connections to actually visualize that exact time that he was trying to visualize.